Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the fascinating, sometimes complex, and frankly, occasionally surprising world of the 1965 Pakistan Arms Ordinance. This is the bedrock document that shaped gun control and weapons regulations in the country for decades. Whether you're a legal buff, a history enthusiast, or just curious about how governments classify everyday objects versus military hardware, this is going to be an eye-opening journey.
To keep things structured, we'll break this explainer down into 5 clear chapters. We'll cover the 1965 Arms Ordinance, what counts as an arm, the rules of licensing, penalties and punishments, and finally, search, seizure, and confiscation. All right, Chapter 1, the 1965 Arms Ordinance, setting the rules for a nation.
Before we get into the really heavy legal jargon, let me ask you a quick, practical question. Think about your kitchen right now. Is a standard kitchen knife considered a weapon under the law? We're going to answer that in just a moment, but keep it in the back of your mind as we explore how the law defines everyday objects.
So this ordinance officially rolled out on June 8, 1965. The main goal was to consolidate and amend the laws relating to the sale, transport, and possession of arms, ammunition, and military stores. But here's the catch. It originally excluded certain regions, specifically the tribal areas. The law also carved out exceptions for arms on seagoing vessels as part of their ordinary equipment, and for military personnel and public servants carrying weapons in the course of their official duties. Basically, this was all about setting boundaries specifically for the civilian population.
Moving on to Chapter 2, what counts as an arm? Decoding the legal definitions.
So answering that kitchen knife question from earlier, you're totally fine. Your standard kitchen knife, or a knife you use in good faith for your profession, is completely exempt. But if you have a dagger or a knife with a blade of 4 inches or more, or a flick knife regardless of how small the blade is, well, now you fall squarely under the jurisdiction of this arms law. And they didn't just stop at firearms. We're talking swords, bayonets, and even bows and arrows are grouped right under the legal umbrella of arms.
And the law doesn't just stop at the weapons themselves. It covers an incredibly broad range of ammunition. It goes way beyond just bullets for a rifle. It gets highly specific about explosive propellants, covering everything from grenades and rockets to torpedo charges and smoke containers. Interestingly, though, they explicitly carved out exceptions for raw materials like lead, sulfur, and saltpeter. Which makes sense, right? Those have plenty of totally normal civilian and industrial uses outside of making explosives.
Now, this next definition brilliantly illustrates the era this document was drafted in. Lawmakers actually felt the absolute need to clearly define what a cannon was for the civilian legal code. They packed all types of artillery, mortars, heavy machine guns, and anti-tank rifles under this specific heading. But wait, it actually gets even wilder.
Yes, according to Section 3 of the Ordinance, nuclear weapons of all types, flamethrowers, bazookas, and guided missiles are casually listed right alongside artillery as cannons. It's a pretty fascinating reflection of that mid-1960s Cold War mindset, isn't it? They were making absolutely sure that no civilian could ever claim a legal loophole to keep a bazooka or, a nuclear device in their backyard.
Chapter 3, the rules of licensing. Who holds the power?
So, the crucial thing to understand here is that the power to grant licenses is strictly divided. The federal government holds the ultimate authority. They alone get to specify which weapons are considered prohibited bores, which usually means military-grade weapons, and they are the only ones who can issue licenses for them. Provincial governments, on the other hand, are way more limited. They only have the power to issue licenses for non-prohibited weapons, and even then, they've got to follow the overarching rules set by the federal government.
But listen, even if you have a license, it doesn't give you free rein. Under Section 11B of the Ordinance, the government can instantly ban you from keeping, carrying, or displaying weapons in sensitive spaces. We're talking educational institutions, political gatherings, religious processions, and courts of law. Those are strictly off limits. The government clearly realized that mixing firearms with highly populated, passionate, or vulnerable public spaces is just a recipe for disaster.
Now, what happens if your paperwork lapses? You absolutely cannot just keep your weapon locked in a closet. The law dictates that you must follow a few strict steps immediately, without unnecessary delay. You have to physically deposit your arms and ammo with the nearest police station or an authorized dealer. If you apply for a renewal within a month and it gets approved, great, you can reclaim your property. But if you don't, or if you just ignore the rules, you risk forfeiting your property entirely to the state.
All right, Chapter 4, Penalties and Punishments. Basically, the or else. The law really escalates the stakes depending on what you're caught doing. Standard unlicensed possession or sale of an ordinary weapon,
That can land you in prison for up to 7 years. But if you step up to military hardware, say dealing in automatic assault rifles like a Kalashnikov or trying to sell a cannon, the law brings the hammer down. You're looking at a minimum of 7 years, going all the way up to 14 years, plus heavy fines and the forfeiture of your property. Minor administrative breaches might just get you a 500 rupee fine, but messing around with prohibited weapons guarantees serious prison time. 14. That's the maximum number of years you could spend behind bars for simply exposing a cannon or an assault rifle for sale without authorization. The ordinance leaves absolutely no room for ambiguity when it comes to high-powered weaponry.
And finally, Chapter 5, Search, Seizure, and Confiscation, when the law steps in. The powers granted to authorities here are incredibly broad. They don't always need a warrant. If someone is found carrying arms in a suspicious manner, they can be apprehended right on the spot. Even more striking, if a magistrate believes that leaving arms in someone's possession is a danger to the public peace, they can order a search of your home and seize your weapons, even if you hold a perfectly valid license. Plus, the government can permanently confiscate not just the illegal weapons, but the actual vehicles or vessels used to transport them. In this legal framework, public safety drastically outweighs individual possession rights.
However, it is worth noting that the ordinance does offer some foundational legal protections. Section 25 clearly lays out that while you can be prosecuted under other laws for an act that violates this ordinance, you cannot be hit with double jeopardy, meaning you won't be punished twice for the exact same crime. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. We've seen how this 1965 law categorized flick knives right alongside nuclear weapons and bazookas just to maintain public peace. But as technology rapidly advances today, think 3D printed ghost guns, drones, smart weapons, how well do mid-20th century legal definitions map onto the 21st century? It is absolutely a critical question for lawmakers today. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Pakistan Arms Ordinance. I hope this gave you a clear, structured understanding of the foundational rules of arms control. Keep questioning and keep learning.